Hey, and welcome back. We got another live stream today. We're gonna have some fun. I'll be doing quite a few of them up and coming. The next couple of videos will be them. We're gonna talk about how to dominate and destroy your negative self-talk. Understand something here that neutral is more powerful than negative and positive, especially when you're dealing with a lot of negative thoughts. Getting to a neutral place is going to be of value. Neutral is that middle point between the negative self talk and the positive self talk. So there's two parts of the brain that we have to understand today, and I'm going to make them as simple as humanly possible because this is not geared towards brain scientists. This is understanding Broca's area and Wernicke's area of the brain. So this helps us understand the neurological basis of speaking out loud in order to challenge and override our negative self-talk. So how these brain regions actually play into it is Broca's areas for speech production. So it is the left frontal lobe. It is near the motor cortex of the brain. And the function is literally responsible for speech production, producing words, articulating words, verbal expression. It has a role in overriding negative self talk. When you speak out loud, Broca's area activates, and that helps you formulate and visualize and vocalize your thoughts. So by verbalizing positive words out loud, you are literally reframing negative self-talk. So what this does, this ensures that your self-talk focuses from an internal monologue, an internal dialogue inside your head to an external shift. So this literally is taking your internal negative loop to external intentional speech. So when you speak out loud, you are giving a physical, deliberate action to counteract your automatic negative self talk that you've been experiencing. That's the first off. That's for Broca's area. Let's go over to Wernicke's area. So Wernicke's area is literally the language understanding center. This is the left temporal lobe near the auditory cortex. So it has to do with the way we hear things. It's responsible for language comprehension and processing meaning. We are meaning making machines, period. So it plays a pretty solid role in overriding your negative self talk. When you hear yourself speak, Wernicke's area processes and interprets the meaning of your words. Positive statements that are spoken out loud in verbalization, it trains your brain. Okay. When you speak out loud, you create a feedback loop that your brain actually hears and processes. So what happens is you reinforce that statement in your brain. So it creates that feedback loop. Now the auditory feedback, it helps replace the internalized negative self-talk. See, our self-talk is so strong, but it's internal. It's in our head and it's internal. When you speak out loud, it has more power, much more power over the internal voice that you have, that inner voice that goes on. So, for example, if you're a person that's a perfectionist and you don't have compassion for yourself, speaking statements of self compassion out loud can actually make a difference. And if you try this just for 2 to 3 days, maybe even hours, you'd be surprised what kind of effects you get. It's not a silver bullet. You can't do it once. This is a practice. You have to take this on as an actual practice. But the auditory feedback, it helps replace that internal dialogue that's going on inside your brain, and it gives that constructive language, which becomes far more believable and productive over time. So, what's the interaction between these two areas of the brain? Well, here's how you can understand it. There are literally a bundle of nerve fibers that link Broca's area to Wernicke's area. And what this does is this allows coordination between speech production and the comprehension of that speech. So when you speak out loud, this pathway integrates the act of speaking with the act of understanding. Got it? Those are the facts right there. This solidifies the impact of your spoken words. So, how does speaking out loud actually reframe your negative self-talk? Well, we understand that negative self-talk is internal, going on in the quiet of your mind. Matter of fact, what you say to yourself in the privacy of your own mind all day long is going to impact your entire life. So negative self-talk carries that silent and repetitive negative programming. Okay. When you speak out loud, you disrupt that loop. You force your brain to focus on creating and processing with language. So what this does is it engages multiple regions of the brain. So what does that do? Well, it activates the area for speech, hearing, and understanding. It makes the process more impactful for you when you do that. Most people feel weird or awkward or, ooh, I can't do that, right? Although they've said there's a great deal of wisdom said when people speak to themselves, right? This is not about having a conversation with second personality, like bleeding over into psychosis or something like that. This is actually coming from a place of understanding your mind and speaking out loud. But what does it really do? Well, it strengthens the neural pathways in the brain. If you're trying to forge a new habit, that new habit is indeed a neural pathway in the brain. And when you speak out loud, it helps you to forge that path. It'll forge that new behavior. So you're strengthening neural pathways, becoming more positive or at least neutral to positive. And what this does is it builds those neural connections in the brain. It makes the connection stronger and more dominant than the old negative self talk patterns. It also gives you a sense of agency. Agency is that power of choice. So it helps you to realize that you do have choices. And physically speaking, can give you a sense of control over your thoughts. And of course, you you step away from being a passive observer of negative self-talk to the creator of a new way of thinking. Empowering language, language that's empowering. Sometimes you can't be too positive all the time because being neutral has a great deal of value. Sometimes you have to process your feelings and then move to that positive place. In other words, you can't just jump into positivity all the time. When you're down and depressed and you're upset, sometimes you have to process your feelings. But a good way to do that is to either journal it or speak out loud. So here's a practical example. When it comes to negative self talk, when you start to say things like, I'm not good enough, I'm a piece of shit, I'm this, I'm that, you have to be able to speak it out loud in a reframe and using words that start with you. You are capable. Okay? You are capable. You are hardworking. You are improving every day. So the Broca's area will produce these words and it'll reinforce the statement. And the brain will shift focus from that inner dialogue, reducing the emotional charge. That's the thing. We have a negative thought and there's an emotional resistance, emotional charge behind it. When you speak out loud, it becomes an override button. Now, why is it actually effective? Like that's what I'm going to go over and we'll wrap it up there. It's effective because there's an auditory confirmation. Hearing your own voice reinforces the message emotionally and neurologically. If you say it out loud with emotion, then it's even more powerful. They do this a lot in the military. You know, you may get a drill sergeant that says, repeat after me and say it out loud, and they may get that level of emotion so high to do that. You're also focusing on intentionality. When you speak out loud, when you're verbalizing, it requires deliberate thought and it makes it harder for negative self talk to dominate. So there is an emotional release as well. When you speak out loud, it can often carry a more emotional weight. The more emotion you put behind it, the more it's helping you let go of some of that negativity. So when you actively engage in Broca and Wernicke's area, you are creating self-reinforcing loop that helps you rewire your brain for healthier thought patterns in your life. And that's all I'm going to say today on this particular episode. And I will catch you on the next one. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.